A gentle breeze stirred the white tent as guests settled into ornate chairs, their laughter and chatter weaving a tapestry of excitement under the late afternoon sun. Silk ribbons fluttered on the backs of chairs, and white roses spilled from crystal vases perched on each table. As the string quartet tuned their instruments, a quiet hush fell over the gathering. The bride's entrance would come soon, but all eyes turned toward the tent flap when a tall figure stepped inside, shoulders squared against a life few could imagine. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. He moved slowly down the aisle, his dark skin glowing in the golden light. Guests exchanged puzzled looks. No one recognized him. Children poked one another, whispering questions. The bride stood poised at the arch of roses, her gaze fixed on the flush of white petals at her feet. The homeless man's eyes were steady, lips pressed in a calm line. He seemed unaffected by the curious stares, as though he carried with him a dignity built of hardships overcome. When the groom stepped forward, arm lifting the bride's hand, his confident smile flickered, and his breath seemed to catch. His gaze locked onto the man at the end of the aisle, and the world around him faded. A wave of something heavy washed over him. Shock, recognition, disbelief. He blinked, his jaw tightening. He had dreamed of this moment for years, yet never imagined it unfolding here, before so many witnesses. Time stretched as the groom took a hesitant step closer. Guests leaned forward, sensing a sudden shift. The homeless man's gaze did not waver. There was relief in his eyes, like a prayer answered. A hush settled over the tent, so profound that even the rustle of dresses and the soft murmur of the string quartet went unnoticed. The officiant cleared his throat, but words caught in his throat as he witnessed the groom's reaction. The bride's eyes widened with concern. She glanced at her new husband, whose strong presence trembled like a fragile leaf in a sudden wind. As the groom advanced, the homeless man folded his hands in front of him. Every spectator held their breath, feeling the tension coil tight, poised to snap. Then, without warning, the groom broke into a run. His polished shoes clicked thunderously across the wooden aisle. Guests gasped and rose to their feet. Chairs scraped on the ground. The bride's veil fluttered as she followed, her heels clicking faster behind him. They met halfway. The homeless man reached out, and the groom closed the rest of the distance in a breath. Their eyes met, two souls bound by memory, separated by fate. The groom's voice cracked as he spoke two words. "Is it you?" The homeless man nodded, tears sliding down his weathered cheeks. A murmur spread like wildfire. The bride caught up and placed a hand on her husband's broad shoulder. He turned and took her hand, gripping it with an intensity that made her wince. For a moment they stood as a trio, caught in a story far greater than this wedding day. When the groom spoke again, his voice steadied into a steady tremor. "You disappeared that night. We thought you were gone forever." The homeless man's hand tightened around his own jacket lapel. "I was," he answered softly. "I needed to find a way back. I never stopped trying." Guests stood transfixed as the groom took his brother's shoulders in his hands. The man whispered something, and the groom's face crumpled. He bowed his head and wept openly, tears of joy and sorrow mingling. The bride pressed herself against her new husband, confusion and compassion battling in her eyes. Moments later, the groom introduced his brother properly, voice strong but gentle. He spoke of their childhood home. The night fire took everything they held dear, the promise they made in the ashes. The man in front of them was the older brother they had mourned, believed dead, whose name had echoed in their hearts for 20 years. Gasps and tears rippled through the crowd. Women dabbed eyes with lace handkerchiefs. Men removed ties and blinked rapidly. Some smiled with wonder. Others crossed themselves in awe. A hush of reverence settled once more. The officiant nodded and stepped back, recognizing that the true ceremony before him was a reunion of souls. The bride wiped her tears and leaned forward to embrace her brother-in-law. His frame felt thin beneath his coat, his shoulders stooped from years on the streets. She studied him with kind eyes, offering comfort and acceptance without question. He hugged her back, burying his face in her hair. as though the scent of fresh blooms could cleanse him of all he had endured. As the quartet softly resumed, a low melody weaving through the hushed crowd, the groom lifted his brother's chin. "Stay with us," he said simply. The man nodded, choking back a sob. "I will," he whispered. Dinner proceeded in a new light. Seated side by side, the brothers shared stories of childhood games beneath the oak tree out back. The summer, they caught lightning bugs in jars, the secret hideout carved into the hillside. Laughter, tentative at first, grew bold and genuine. The bride watched them, tears still shimmering, her hand resting on the lapel of her new husband's tuxedo, where a single drop of water had fallen. After dinner, the young couple slipped away to the garden. Lanterns glowed among the hedges, casting a soft golden warmth. The bride's hand found her husband's, and they stood in silence for a moment. "He's home," the groom said quietly. "I thought I'd lost him forever." "You found him," she replied, her voice certain. "And now he's here with us." He nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I want him to be part of our life. All of it." She smiled up at him. "We'll build something new together." Back in the tent, the homeless man rested his head on the table, exhaustion and emotion crashing into him. A server offered a glass of water and a plate of wedding cake. He tasted the cake slowly, savoring sweetness he hadn't known in years. A circle of guests approached him, each offering a hand, a word of welcome, a pat on the back. Strangers who had come to celebrate union now celebrated restoration. He thanked, each of them with that same quiet dignity, eyes shining with gratitude. Later, as the moon climbed high, the groom called everyone to the dance floor. The bride led the first dance, swaying to the soft strains of the violin. The homeless man hesitated at the edge, uncertainty flickering in his posture. The bride saw him and slipped from her husband's embrace, extending her hand. He took it tentatively. She guided him to the floor, and the quartet shifted to a gentle waltz. He closed his eyes, grief and hope swirling in his chest like wind through the oaks. When he opened them again, the bride smiled and the groom stood nearby, hands clasped. As he moved in time with the music, the homeless man realized that this dance, this moment, marked the first steps of his new life. The bride's hand was warm in his, and around them, friends and family circled, creating a safe space in which he could begin again. When the song ended, the crowd cheered, and the bride hugged him tightly. "Welcome home," she whispered. The groom draped an arm around his brother's shoulders. "Welcome back," he echoed. In that moment, under the twinkling lanterns and a sky bursting with stars, the homeless black man was no longer invisible. He was son, brother, friend, part of a family that had weathered fire and homelessness and emerged stronger. He was hope made flesh, proof that love can outlast the darkest nights. As the celebration carried on, the man wandered through the crowd, greeting guests with a shy smile. Children tugged on his sleeve to dance, and elders squeezed his hand in, blessing. Glasses were raised in toasts, laughter rolled across the lawns, and the scent of jasmine drifted on the warm breeze. When the last guest departed and the tent lay empty, the brothers and the bride lingered among the chairs. The groom reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph, the edges worn from years of being folded. He handed it to his brother. The man opened it with trembling fingers. Two little boys covered in soot, grinning widely beside a burned-out shed. The groom on the right, his brother on the left. They were inseparable then. Now, the photograph reunited what time had claimed. The older brother traced the image with a fingertip. "You never gave up looking for me," he said softly. "I never will," the groom replied. They folded the photograph carefully and slipped it into a new frame the bride had provided. Together they placed it on a nearby table, where it would remind them, and all who visited, of the power of perseverance, forgiveness, and love. At dawn, the homeless man slept soundly in a spare room at the couple's home. His dreams were filled with laughter and warmth. Outside, the world awoke to a day he never thought he would see. He rose, dressed in clothes the bride had chosen, new yet simple, fitting him like a promise. He joined the couple on the porch as sunlight bathed the garden. The bride handed him a cup of coffee, and the groom offered a plate of pancakes. Over breakfast, they spoke of the future, a place to call home, a job to rebuild his independence, a family that would stand by him. He looked at them, his eyes steady. "I don't know how to thank you." The groom smiled. "Just keep being you." The bride reached across the table. "We're family now." He nodded, tasting the sweetness of pancakes and belonging. Outside, the roses bloomed and a new chapter began. The homeless black man was no longer a stranger at a wedding, but a brother found, a life restored, and a reminder that sometimes the most shocking moments are miracles in disguise.